Welcome, dear friends. Today's podcast is based on the spiritual classic, Divine Intimacy, Meditations on the Interior Life for Every Day of the Liturgical Year by Father Gabriel of St. Mary Magdalen, OCD. For more Carmelite resources, visit the General Curia of the Teresian Carmel at discalcedcarmelite.com. Now let us begin our journey into Father Gabriel's profound spiritual insights.
Welcome back. Glad to have you with us as we continue our deep dive into Father Gabriel's divine intimacy. And as we journey through Lent together, exploring these daily meditations, I find myself drawn to this selection from the first week of Lent. It's called The Struggle Against Sin, which feels, I don't know about you, but feels especially relevant now as we're trying to deepen our relationship with God.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is a weighty topic, for sure. But I think, Father Gabriel, he brings a perspective to it that's insightful, really insightful and encouraging. And he doesn't want us to feel condemned by our struggles, but rather, he guides us toward understanding God's mercy and really the transformative power of grace.
Yes, I love how he connects this struggle directly to the experience of Jesus in the desert. So it's not, some abstract concept, but a reality that Christ himself faced and overcame.
Yeah, and that connection to Christ's temptation really grabs your attention. He doesn't just summarize the three temptations, right? Like turning stones to bread, casting himself down, accepting worldly power. But he digs into the deeper meaning of each one.
He really does. And instead of just listing them, he challenges us to see how they reflect temptations that, we all face, like the desires of the flesh, the allure of pride, and that seduction of, worldly ambition. He brings the scriptural passages to life.
Yeah.
And makes them applicable to our everyday lives.
Totally. And you know what I find fascinating? It's how Father Gabriel contrasts Jesus' choice to be tempted with our own involuntary encounters with temptation. And it really highlights a difference, right? Because Jesus willingly confronted these desires head on. But for us, a lot of times we're caught off guard, wrestling with these temptations that just arise almost from within us.
Right. It makes you realize the depth of his sacrifice, that he willingly entered into that so that we wouldn't have to face it alone. And it sheds light on why the Lenten practices, like self-denial, are so important. It's not just giving things up out of the blue, but consciously choosing to confront those desires that might be pulling us away from God.
Exactly. By facing our own deserts, those moments of dryness or temptation, we learn to rely more fully on God's grace. And it's in those struggles that we discover, the truth of Jesus' words. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God.
And it's in those moments of struggle that we really begin to understand the meaning of conversion.
Yeah, speaking of conversion, I'm drawn to this image from Ezekiel that Father Gabriel uses, where God is described as the good shepherd, seeking out his scattered sheep, bringing them to nourishment and rest.
Oh, I love that image. It speaks to the tenderness of God's love and his constant pursuit of us, even when we stray.
Exactly. Even when we feel lost or scattered, God is always searching for us, calling us back to himself. And it connects to, Father Gabriel's emphasis on striving for sanctity. He's reminding us that conversion isn't a one-time thing, but a lifelong journey of turning back towards God.
Yeah, and he doesn't pretend like it's easy. We're going to face setbacks. We're going to fall short.
Yeah.
But even those repeated failures, they're not a reason to give up, are they? He says they should actually deepen our humility and increase our reliance on God's grace.
It's so easy to get discouraged, but Father Gabriel, he brings us back. It's not about being perfect. It's about that daily conversion. It's constant, reorienting our hearts towards God.
And this is where Father Gabriel's discussion of sin gets really real. He doesn't shy away. He confronts us with the reality of sin, not just breaking rules, but as this force that pulls us away from God, that disrupts that unifying power of love, which we call charity.
He uses really powerful examples to kind of drive home this point, Lucifer, Adam and Eve, single sins, devastating consequences, not trying to make us feel guilty, just to highlight how powerful our actions are, even the ones that seem small.
And then he takes it a step further with this idea of the passion of Christ.
Yeah.
As deicide, he's saying, in a sense, sin killed God.
Whoa, it's a lot to take in, isn't it? But it emphasizes the love of God.
Right.
Enduring suffering to redeem us from sin.
It makes you wonder how we, as followers of Christ, can participate in his work of destroying sin in the world. And Father Gabriel points to penance, prayer, and love as our weapons in this ongoing struggle.
You know, that's a really key point. Love as a weapon, it's not just about willpower, it's about cultivating love for God. So profound that it dries out darkness.
Yeah, it's like love becomes that driving force, pushing us away from sin and toward God. A much more, positive approach.
Absolutely. And it leads us right into the next part, where Father Gabriel talks about different types of sin and how they affect us. He talks about venial sin and imperfections, which a lot of people get confused about.
Yeah, I think clearing that up would be incredibly helpful for our listeners. So what did he say about the difference between venial sin and imperfection? And how can we use that understanding in our daily struggle?
So he explains that both venial sin and imperfection are contrary to God's will. They both hinder spiritual growth, but they differ in their nature and their effects on our relationship with God.
Okay, so what makes them different?
Well, venial sin, that's a direct transgression, deliberate turning away from his will, while imperfection is more about omitting some good act that charity calls us to do.
Oh, okay, so can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say, you should do something kind for someone.
Right.
But you don't, out of laziness or selfishness. That would be an imperfection. Doesn't destroy charity, but it does hold us back. Prevents us from fully living out God's love.
It's like choosing good, but not the best. Settling for a lesser degree of generosity.
Exactly. And then Father Gabriel warns about habitual venial sin. It's like a slow leak in our spiritual lives. It dulls our sensitivity to good and makes us vulnerable to bigger falls.
Like that image, the slow leak draining our spiritual vitality. He quotes St. Teresa of Avila about this, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. She warns against dismissing even small offenses because of the cumulative effect they have.
And on the other side of that, what does he say about unintentional faults? The things we do wrong, even though we're trying.
That's a good question. Surprisingly, he says those can actually be beneficial because they teach us humility, reliance on God, and awareness of our need for grace.
That is comforting. For those of us who tend to worry about every little mistake, God can use our failings to bring us closer.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a crucial practice in this whole battle, examining our conscience. Not to beat ourselves up, but as a tool for growth and self-knowledge.
Yeah, so we were talking about examining our conscience. And it's not about, picking apart every little thing we do wrong or dwelling on guilt and shame, right? It's about understanding ourselves better, our patterns, our motivations. He compares it to knowing your enemy in battle or mapping out the terrain before an expedition.
So being honest with ourselves, looking at our weaknesses, areas where we need to grow. And I think Father Gabriel really stresses going beyond just listing those faults, right? It's about asking why we fail, what's at the root of our struggles. He gives really specific advice about this. Like, don't just catalog the failings. Analyze why they happen. What keeps coming up? What situations, what emotions lead to those bad choices? That's how we gain self-knowledge and focus our efforts where they're most needed.
Reminds me of that line from The Art of War. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Seems like Father Gabriel's applying that to the spiritual life.
Exactly. And for those who are maybe further along on their spiritual journey, more advanced, he talks about those surprise failings. Times when we stumble, even though we thought we'd made progress in that area. It's about figuring out why those happen and how to lessen their impact.
That's such an important point, I think. For anyone really striving for deeper intimacy with God, it's not about becoming immune to temptation or failure. It's about how we respond. With more humility, more reliance on grace.
And this leads into the sacrament of confession, right? Which Father Gabriel doesn't see as a chore, but as vital for conversion, a powerful encounter with God's mercy. And he says it's not just for big sins, but venial ones too.
Yeah, and I appreciate how he cautions against routine. Even if we go to confession often, each time should be a real encounter with that mercy, with the transformative power of forgiveness. And he uses that vivid imagery from St. Catherine of Siena, right?
Hey. Oh, yes. She talks about confession as God bathing us in his precious blood, cleansing us from the stains of sin. It's such a powerful image of renewal.
Speaks to the sheer gift of God's mercy. Always there for us, no matter how often we fall.
And when we confess venial sins, Father Gabriel has some good advice. He says to focus on the ones that were deliberate. Confess not just the action, but what was behind it, the motivation.
That's helpful, yeah. Helps both the person confessing and the priest to understand what's really going on.
Right. It's deeper than just a list of failings. It's about understanding ourselves and God. That constant striving for purer hearts, which is what ultimately unites us to him.
I like how he ties this back to continual conversion, something we talked about earlier. It's not about reaching some fixed point,
Yeah.
but constantly turning back to God, seeking his grace, and letting that love change us.
And this transformation, as we've been saying, it's not always easy. It takes courage, honesty, willingness to go through this purification process, even when it's painful.
But it's a hopeful journey, because we're not alone. God's with us every step of the way, offering his grace, his forgiveness, his love that never wavers.
And he uses even our failings to teach us, to refine us, to bring us closer. This is where I really connect with what Father Gabriel says about imperfections. It's not just about what we do wrong, but those chances for greater love that we miss.
Right, he's reminding us that it's not enough just to avoid sin. We have to actively pursue holiness, seek out those better acts that charity calls for.
Yeah. Imperfections, they're not outright breaking God's law, but they still hold us back, like settling for good when we're capable of so much more.
It's like that voice inside that says, you could do better, but we shush it with excuses.
Father Gabriel even quotes St. John of the Cross, who said that even one habitual, voluntary imperfection can hinder our progress towards union with God. Pretty strong words.
They are. A challenge to look not just at what we do, but why. Are we really giving God our all? Or are we holding back because of fear or selfishness or just getting comfortable?
It's a call to radical discipleship, a life of total surrender, of generosity without limits.
And to being honest with ourselves. We can't grow if we don't admit where we fall short, even the little things.
We need those moments of reflection to take stock, make sure we're headed the right way. And this is where having a spiritual director or someone to hold us accountable can be really helpful.
Absolutely. Someone to gently but firmly point out our blind spots, challenge us to grow, encourage us along the way. That can make all the difference.
And this whole struggle, this striving for holiness, it never really ends, does it? It's not something we conquer and then we're done. It's a daily battle. We need to stay vigilant, humble, and always leaning on God's grace.
Even when we're discouraged, feeling overwhelmed, we have that hope in God's mercy. It never runs out. He's always ready to forgive, to welcome us back.
That's what's so beautiful about confession. It's not just confessing, it's receiving that love, that forgiveness.
And that empowers us to keep going, to keep fighting the good fight, knowing we're not alone. That victory is possible through his grace.
It reminds us that the struggle is real, but God's love is greater. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking at our heart. Are we willing to surrender to his power to change us?
And that starts with a simple step, admitting we need him, confessing our sins, letting his grace do its work.
And as we go through Lent and beyond, let's embrace this chance for deeper conversion, more radical surrender to God's will. Let's go to confession, letting his love and forgiveness transform us from the inside out.
Let's not just focus on avoiding those big sins, but root out the little imperfections that hold us back. Let's be generous, always seeking what pleases God most.
And remember, we're not alone in this. God is with us, fighting alongside us, and his grace is all we need.
Even in our weaknesses, our failings, God's love shines through, offering hope, healing, and the promise of victory in the end.
And that victory isn't about being impossibly perfect. It's about letting God's love transform us, make us more like him, day by day.
More loving, more compassionate, more forgiving, like the one who loved us first and gave himself for us.
And it all starts with that choice, to turn away from sin and turn towards God with everything we are.
You know, it makes me think of that parable, the prodigal son, how the father runs to meet his son, embraces him, welcomes him home without a single word of blame. That's the image of God's mercy we need, especially when we're feeling lost.
No matter how far we stray, God is waiting, arms open, ready to forgive, to heal, to lead us back to that path of love.
Like St. Augustine said, Peccavi, Domine, miserere me. I have sinned, Lord, have mercy on me. We can all pray that from our hearts, knowing his mercy is bigger than any sin.
It's a prayer of humility, surrender, deep trust in God's love, his compassion that knows no bounds.
And that's a beautiful thought to carry with us as we continue reflecting on Father Gabriel's insights. He's really pushing us to go deeper in our spiritual lives, to face those weaknesses with honesty and courage, and to open ourselves to the power of God's grace.
He's reminding us that this struggle, this striving for holiness, it's not a burden, it's an invitation to deeper intimacy with the one who loves us more than we can imagine.
And in that intimacy, we find true freedom, true joy, and the fulfillment of everything we long for. And it's in that that surrender to God's love that we discover the beauty of the spiritual life.
Yeah.
It's not about reaching some perfect state. It's about constantly growing and purifying and surrendering more deeply.
It takes courage and honesty to confront those shadows within us and to admit we need God's grace. But there's hope, too, because God isn't just, watching us struggle. He's working within us, drawing us closer. He uses even our failings to help us grow.
That's why those times we mess up, even when we're trying, those unintentional faults, they can be good in a way. They remind us how much we need God, and they bring us back to his mercy and confession.
It's not just about listing sins. It's about really experiencing that forgiveness, letting God renew us with his love. It's about finding that peace that comes from being right with God, with ourselves.
Washed clean, like you were saying earlier, with the precious blood, made new. And we can go on with a lighter heart. What a beautiful image of healing.
And that's what we're called to, isn't it? To let God's love change us, to make us more like him, to draw us into that union with him that brings true joy.
It's not always an easy journey, but it's worth it. As we wrap up this deep dive into Father Gabriel's divine intimacy, I just feel so grateful for his insights, especially in this meditation, the struggle against sin. Lots to think about, to really ponder in our hearts.
He's challenged us, for sure, to be honest with ourselves, to face our weaknesses, and to really embrace God's mercy, how powerful it is.
And he reminds us that this struggle, this striving for holiness, it's not a burden, it's an invitation to a deeper relationship with the one who loves us more than we can comprehend.
And as we continue through Lent and beyond, may his words inspire us to keep striving, seeking God's grace, letting his love lead us closer and closer.
Thank you for being with us on this deep dive. We hope you found it thought-provoking, encouraging for your own spiritual journey.
As you go on from here, think about this. What's one area of your life where you might be holding back from God? What one step can you take today to draw closer to him?
May God bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you.
And give you peace.
Thank you for spending this time with us today, reflecting on the wisdom of the Carmelite saints. I hope these words have inspired and uplifted you. Until next time, may God bless us and keep us close to his heart. Take care and see you soon.